everyone's different. I'd never thought and set out to be creating some BMX career. If I want something, I'm not saying, hey, you have what I want, I'm going to beat your brains in and take it from you. I'm saying, if I want something, I got to fight for it. So, well, I've been fighting my whole life. So what's the big deal? I'm not up for a title, but I'm in a perfect place to win the Grands. After the first two mains, if I win the last main and certain people do something, I'll win the race. I'm going into the first turn out front. The people that needed to not do well were not doing well. Coming out of first turn, they stopped the race. We had to do a rerun because 3 guys crashed at the first jump. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. I get back up on the gate. I get out of the gate. I'm going over the first jump. I roll a pedal. I don't know what place I was in. I was up there, but I roll a pedal. And the next thing I know, I'm going over the bars. And then sometimes people say, well, if you train all year long and fall short, well, that's a bummer. That sucks. Like, you did all that work for nothing. And I'm like, yeah, you could look at it that way. If you've never won shit in your life, that's how you might look at it.
That's right.
But you might work all year long and fall short. The journey to success only travels through failure.
Meet the Guest. Next chapter. Part of the Coach Robb Podcast Network.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet the Guest Next Chapter. We have a new milestone on the podcast. We have a second interview. Mr. Greg Hill himself has been incredibly generous with his time. Greg, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How you doing? Thank you for having me again. Appreciate it.
Well, I can't tell you how many things I was really curious to ask you about. And as I shared with you, I had no idea you had such a badass background. Of course, it explains a lot. I used the Waterford Oaks, Michigan ESPN series as a big epiphany for me. I'm like, oh, now I understand Greg and what makes him tick a little bit. So again, thank you for coming back. This will be the first time we've had a part 2 to a guest, and
awesome.
I'm very excited because, like I shared with you in episode 1, I feel like I'm visiting with Santa Claus in regards to like
Look like Santa. So
no,
oh, good.
With you putting out that training book, like I said, it really gave me some inspiration. It was the only book I could find.
Right.
And the fact that our paths have come back around together, I'm beyond thankful. But one of the things I was thinking about, and you and I had spoken a little bit about it when we got our text banter going initially, was you've had such a tremendous career in BMX. I mean, it goes without saying that, you used the word earlier, pivot. You created so many pivots in the sport. And then you look at, I kind of parallel BMX, 80s BMX with 80s music. If you talk to anybody who grew up in the 80s and you throw out Greg, you throw out Stu, you throw out the Patterson brothers, you throw out the Anderson brothers, you could just go down that laundry list.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who they are. It's kind of like you turn on a Van Halen album, or you turn on a Tears for Fears album, or you turn on a Billy Joel or an Elton John, and people can sing along immediately. They can resonate with it.
Right.
And one of the things that I wanted to ask you here early today in our conversation is, you've had so many huge milestones. You've accomplished so much, and I think in a relatively short period of time. Is there any one, and it doesn't even have to be BMX related, but is there one achievement or milestone in your life that you're sitting at holidays and you're, just reminiscing? Is there one that always comes to the top of your head as like, that's the pinnacle? Like, I'll give you an example for myself. I remember the first year I got my first motorcycle at Christmas. I'll never forget it.
Right.
Do you have anything like that with all of your accomplishments that really stick out?
Yeah, and it's funny because it doesn't have anything to do with racing.
Okay.
If that's all right. I mean, it's
Absolutely. That's what I
the
think.
racing stuff was great, but
Yeah.
I've been doing my epoxy business now for 8 years, and so people understand, like, I'm licensed and I'm insured. I'm an owner operator. My at 61 years of age, my aspirations is just to be like, let me just do 3 jobs a week. I'm not trying to build a successful, huge company here. 30 years ago, it would have been like, let me learn this. Let me get dirty for 2 years. Let me start hiring people. I'll do the sales and marketing. I got guys, but I'm not doing that now. So my thing was about probably I've done hundreds of jobs. I've done over 1,000 jobs now at this point. And I had a job like it's probably was maybe 3 months ago. And you get to a point where you go like automated, just like when I was at a race, I would just like, once the feet hit the ground out of the rental car and like, you're just like a different person. I'm going to the moto board to find out what race I'm in and what lane I'm in. I don't give a shit who's in my moto. Just I need what I need, and that's all I need. And so I was coming home from a job. I'm sorry for making this long. I was coming home from a job,
You're not.
calling my wife,
No.
talking to her on the way home. And what's cool is my wife, I knew since we were 10 years old. Like when I first started racing, she used to beat me for the first 4 to 5 months every week. Okay. And then from 10 to 15, then we went our separate ways. And then we came back. We've been 30 years married now. So when I speak to her she knows the whole thing, like, so I said, you know what? I had a crazy feeling today, just when I was just pulled out of the job. And it's very emotional because I feel like I never set out to be an epoxy coatings guy, I had no idea what it was like to be a regular person. I just was loving my bike, and then my bike turned into, you could make some extra money, and that turned into a career and all this stuff. I'm not normal. That's not normal. You don't learn how to be in 10th grade and have your eyes open. Okay, I'm going to graduate in 2 years. What do I want to go to a trade school? I want a degree. I want to blah, blah. None of that. It's just, when is the bell going to ring so I can get on my bike? I want to race. And that's all I knew. So I was driving away from this job, and I was like so happy because I was like, I sold the job like 4 or 5 days prior. I bought the material a couple of days before the job. I went and did the job. I got paid for it. Realized my profit as I'm driving home. And I'm like, I looked at the floor when I was done, and I was like, and I'm not saying I do the greatest floors because I don't, but I'm just saying, I told myself, dude, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe people call me to come do their floors. I can't believe some of the reviews I get where people say, positive stuff. It's like, I never knew I feel accomplished. Yeah, I don't make tremendous amounts of money. We make what we need to make. And what we make that's worth more than that is we make a lot of extra time, that I have to do shit. So the accomplishment of getting out of BMX, getting away from it, and being like, hey man, I'm doing this stuff. And I didn't go to special training. I didn't work for a company for 10 years. I just was like, I want to do this. There's a backstory to what got me to do this that's pretty deep. It has to do with the huge pivot, like when you really literally have to get out of the vehicle and walk with no vehicle to find a new one that you can get going down the road of life in,
Yeah.
But I felt accomplished in that moment, in that job. Like, it was just a good feeling. Like, I wonder after I'm done racing if I can do this or what I'm going to do, And racing, I don't, maybe I talk too much and I don't mean to, but racing doesn't teach you how to work with a coworker that you don't maybe blend well with. It doesn't teach you. Racing teaches you that if someone cuts you off, you jump in their shit and you get in it fast. So like, that don't work in the work environment. And all these things, like, it's like, you have to like literally be like, my racing person. Is this like a PG gig right now, or?
Nope, not at all.
My racing person was an asshole. Okay. I've had people, I've read it on threads. Oh, I met that guy once. He was the biggest asshole. Yes, man, I am. When I just got 5th place in a semi and you're wanting to talk to me, I'm going to be a jerk off. If you're even if I stop at all. So you have to change and become a whole different person. Can I be able to do something? Can I survive without BMX? That moment was pretty there's been a few moments like that, but just to be like, wow, I've been doing this for 8 years now, and I really feel like I know what I'm doing. It's cool.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's the epicenter of this whole podcast is transitioning. That's why it's hence the word next chapter.
Yes.
As we talked about in the first episode together, like Federer said, every top professional has two deaths in their life, the actual physical and the end of that career. And I loved what you just said. And if you don't mind, I want to stay on this thread of thought.
Yeah. It's great.
When you drove away from that site and you realized you got the job started, you fulfilled it, that accomplishment level, what does it do for you and your wife knowing that for the first time in your career, you're building your own company? Yes, I know GHP was your company,
Yeah.
but
Right.
you're also employing a lot of people. You're selling ancillary products. You're selling gear. Those aren't your companies.
Right.
You're selling. I think at the time, I think you've had several companies that were your gear provider when you went GHP.
Yeah.
I, I think I saw some with Arrow. I think I saw some with GT
Yeah.
or JT.
All kinds of different stuff,
And you didn't own that. And here you are, you're pulling merchandise across a register, which is cool, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about in episode number 1, you were selling magazines for Gork. You were selling magazines for Wendy. It was the Bible. It was what we had.
Right.
But you're on the cover. And yes, maybe you got some bonuses for being on the cover,
Right.
but the magazine sold. There was a tremendous amount of ads that were sold, and you were in the majority of those ads. You're creating revenue for everybody. I always use the analogy, no pun intended. You're at the hub and you're the spoke that keeps bringing money into everybody else. What does that feel like for yourself? And I think if I heard you correctly, you've had the company now for 8 years, correct?
Yeah.
What does that transition feel like where you're driving home from that job and it hits you? How many times in a row have you felt that? Or is it kind of like you felt like your boat, the water rose and you're at an all new high, excuse me? Or do you feel like have you hit a new plateau? Or do you feel like there's ups and downs?
Yeah. Like for me, because of how I operate, I can only do so many jobs a week, like physically, if I do 4 jobs a week, I'm feeling like I just got home from the hardest leg day every day. Like it's hard, right?
Yeah.
So my magic number is doing 3 a week. When I do 3 a week, I recover. I have that other day I go and I get material and clean the van. It's all under control. So I've had many different, this is weird, hard to explain. I've had many different pivot moments that a lot of times people think pivoting is like, okay, we pivoted and we got to the next level. For me, it's been the story of, hey man, you have 2 choices right now. If you're making $10, okay, you got a couple of months to pivot or you're going to be making no bucks. So you got to pivot and you're still getting $10 when you figured it out. You're not pivoting for 3 times the pay.
Sure.
Because I'm not. If someone knows how to do that, you know how to get a hold of me, let's talk. But for me, it's like, you got to sometimes pivot to keep the food showing up on the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a period of time when I got completely lucky with Facebook. Like Facebook marketplace for advertise for like there's a free marketplace and then you can boost ads and pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys that are doing really well are spending $5,000 a month on Facebook ads.
Sure.
I'm not doing that. There was a time for 3 years, the free Facebook ads, I was getting 3 jobs every week for like 3 years.
Mm.
I would just renew the ads and they would just keep running and people would reach out to me and always had massive messages. And then all of a sudden they changed their algorithm completely to try to focus on their paid ads and this and that. And it went totally dead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, wow, my phone, either it's broken or nobody's calling it. And my phone's never been broken. So like, just like 3 weeks ago, it was busy for 3 or 4 months, really good. I did like the biggest job I've ever done by myself. Like in April, I think it was, I did a 2,300 square foot airplane hangar,
Wow.
in 2 days. And it was great. And then now for the last 2 weeks, I've done 1 job,
Mm.
and so it ebbs and flows. When it ebbs and flows, you got to find out what you're doing. So I've increased my Google ads. I was like thinking about my van, and I think about it in terms of just a work van. It's just to throw crap in it and let's go do a job. It's going to get dirty and messy. And well, the outside of it just had like stickers, like, one like 10-inch by 3 foot and 4 foot long. It wasn't all dialed in. So I called a buddy of mine, Danny Ashbrook. He's out in the high desert, and he does all kinds of print stuff. He used to race BMX. And anyways, I'm like, hey man, I need the van completely wrapped right now. I talked to my buddy. This is funny. I talked to another buddy of mine, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about getting the van wrapped so it looks, and he didn't even hesitate, dude. He says, you mean so it doesn't look like you're delivering illegals every day when you go places? I said, exactly, dude. My van looks like the typical, I got a bunch of illegals in here and I'm doing a drop, It's not. So anyways, we left. But so my pivot right now is get the van wrapped, increase the ads on Google, I'm doing a few other things too, but like you're always pivoting, Where in BMX, the pivot was, well, I got smoked last weekend, so I need to stay on the diet and I need to stay consistent with the training and I need to forget everything that's happened and know you can win the next race. So always a pivot every single weekend. You know what I mean? So
I do. And I want to keep running with this thread of thought because you're onto something that I'm completely fascinated with. We're launching a coaching certification program in January. We're going to just, doesn't have to be an X racer. Obviously it was originally designed for X racers, but
that's cool.
if you're somebody that wants to get into the world of human performance in any sport, we're going to be providing an undergraduate and a graduate degree level education. So you'll know physiology, nutrition, sports psychology. And the thing that I always say to my athletes, and the goal, of course, is for them to become a full-time coach. Yeah. It's the idea that, and I very bluntly ask, why do you want to work for yourself? And they say, because I want more time and free money. And I said, well, the bad news is you're going to have neither for about 10 years. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, and I'm going to use yourself as an example because it's so powerful. You're running aero gear and JT comes over to you and offers you 10,000 more. And then you're running JT gear and I'm going to use today's day and age. Fly comes over and offers you another 10 gear. And then all of a sudden Thor's offering you gear. Then Fox's, they're always coming after you. You don't have to wonder. And what caught my attention when you made the comment is when the phone stops ringing.
Dude, no one's coming after you when you park the bike.
That's right.
Nobody cares.
Yep.
Or I don't want to say something, but I don't want to cut you off on what you were saying.
No. Go right ahead. Please.
Well, I found I read an article, it's been a long time ago. Okay. And it was about a guy named Dennis Rodman, the greatest rebounder in the game, period. I don't care what anyone says.
Amen.
The dude that got paid to not score. Okay. He was pretty crazy character, but he did a book and he was explaining how he had, before he found greatness, he wound up in the parking lot of the arena, late at night when the game was over and everybody's gone, and he had a gun on him. I don't know what kind of gun. He wasn't in the parking lot to commit suicide. He wasn't. But what he did, or how he explained it, I could be wrong, but this is my interpretation of his story, is that he used his gun to kill his image. He was just like any other guy, but he had a wild side. And he basically terminated his conservative self and said, from this point forward, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be who I want to be. If I want to show up with red hair and play basketball, I'm going to do that. And he just started doing his own thing. And he just, I don't watch basketball today, but if you know much about basketball, you'll know the greatest, or one of the greatest of all time rebounders is Dennis Rodman.
That's right.
And you'll know that if you have two teams and they both score 120 points every night and they go to play each other, the team that has the best rebounder is going to win that game. It's just how it works. So I realized that when I stopped racing, the harsh reality is that a lot of people say the harsh reality is that nobody cares anymore. Your phone don't ring anymore. You don't matter anymore. Well, no, the harsh reality is that no one pulls you aside at the twilight of your career and says, hey, I want you to be ready for this. This is what happens when you're not doing it anymore. And then kind of like prepare you for this. Being prepared for that. I wasn't, I was, it was difficult to go from, and it's not just about racing because and I'll be honest, when I say this, the only main reason I did GHP was because I was in BMX as a racer. I retired. I worked within the industry. I did a lot of things for different people. And I came to the point where, hey, it's time to do something else. Why did I decide to do GHP and be involved in BMX for 14 years? Because I didn't want to roll the dice. I didn't want to be where I was sitting in my bedroom 8 years ago before I started this, and what got me to decide to do this. I was prolonging that. So I stayed in BMX because it was what I knew.
Yeah. And you mentioned it now 3 times, and this is exactly what I want to elaborate on. You mentioned the idea that your phone stopped ringing. And I don't think there's anybody who's been successful that hasn't experienced Greg Hill on the cover, Greg Hill on the inside cover, Greg Hill in 4 pictures in 7 races at the races the magazine's covering. Greg Hill, Greg Hill, Greg Hill, results, Greg Hill, ads, hubs, levers, seat post. And then you open the magazine for the first time and there's no Greg Hill at all from cover to cover.
Yeah.
No magazines and no phone calls. And then you go out and you've got this race career. You decide to pivot over to the 3-part epoxy business. In 3 years, business is going great. Second time around, phone stops ringing. How does Greg Hill get up and do it again and again and again after this many years?
To go from the BMX game into epoxy?
Just how you can go from being the guy, everybody wants you, to the phone stops ringing. You pivot into the epoxy world. 3 years, you're on fire, steam rolling. You've got the Midas touch, everything's working. And for the second hard time in your career, the phone stops and it's back to Greg to get it going. How do you get yourself out of bed, realizing this thing is not working?
Right.
The
You're going to have so for me, my experience was I got to cover the first one. The first big experience was I'm done with BMX. I'm done with GHP. And I know I got to do something else.
What year was that, Greg?
That was 2017, I believe.
Okay.
I was in 2016 well aware that the market for BMX frames was just so oversaturated, and I wasn't willing to give it every ounce of energy I have to just get subpar pay and to just stay in something that I knew, because I knew it, So I knew I had to do something different. I had some experience in epoxy, just a short period around 2000 with a good buddy of mine. So I kind of knew I could do it. I wound up having to make that choice. My wife says, listen, I mention my wife a lot, so people understand, is that my wife is my life partner. I don't go decide to buy a new car and just show up and say, hey babe, look what we got today.
Right. I
don't change careers without saying, hey, what do you think? And she's always such the perfect, her responses are unbelievably awesome. So she's like, I don't know what you're going to do, but you need to go somewhere and figure it out. You need to go away from here, go where no one's around, and sit down and talk to the man upstairs and figure out what you want to do and start doing it. I don't care what you do.
Wow.
I want you to be happy. So go.
Yeah.
And I wound up in my bedroom, man. And I wound up in my bedroom, door shut, locked. Hey, I'm going to be in here a while. Just leave me be. And dude, I was thinking, and finally I was like, and I'm not preaching to people here. I'm just telling you my experience here. I was like, I can't figure this out. I got off my bed, sat on the floor with my elbows on my knees, my head down. I started praying to God and tell him, look, I'm lost, man. I don't know what I'm going to do here. I got no direction. I don't have an avenue in front of me or choices. I just simply don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I started bawling my head off, man. And I was just I got in that moment, and it came out of that moment with not an answer, but a lot of relief and a feeling of just take a deep breath. It wasn't words. It was a feeling. It was like, take a deep breath. Just open your ears, stop thinking, and start feeling, you know? And I just had a feeling. I was like, I know this stuff. I know epoxy. I know that I could figure this out. And I like it. I do like it because you show up and the floor looks like hell, and you leave and the floor looks pretty cool. So you get to do that and experience it. It feels good.
Yep.
So I was like, I got to do epoxy, man. Well, I'm trying to be quick here. I decided I want to do epoxy flooring, but I'm very realistic. And I know that, I got to eat every week. So I got to find a source of income, and I got to learn epoxy and figure that road out. So now I got to do these two things and kind of go like that,
Sure. Yep.
Well, excuse me.
Bless you.
Out of the blue, I decide, hey, we weren't done with GHP, I don't think. I had this epiphany before. I then decided, hey, we have just got a bunch of frames. We got 450 frames, and they used to retail for $350 to $400, right? So I told my wife, I said, hey, there's no future in this, as you know. I'm going to change the pricing on the webs on all these frames to $150 shipped. So you go in the cart, $150, click what color you want, boom, buy it. We sold all our frames in 4 days. We got rid of GHP. The money we got in, we didn't owe really much for anything, but we made sure we were paid up with everything. Close the company, done. Now I'm going to focus on training, because I was doing training. And in BMX, what I was doing, you could only make 40 grand a year or whatever. It was like a part-time job.
Sure.
But so I decided to do that. And I went to this all timed itself out to where I went to Vegas for the first race of the year. And I met up with a friend of mine, a guy named Dale Robinson, and we were friends, and I trained his kids, and I went to work for, the long story short, there's a Remix BMX brand, right? And I hooked him and the owner up, and he bought the name, and he wanted me to work for him. So, there's some detailed stuff and personal crap I don't want to get into, but the point was,
Sure,
had a handshake deal, started working. We went, Lemoore, California, about 3 hours north of here. The Nationals used to get 300 motos. Dude, we'd be out there, mains are 9 o'clock at night, big.
wow.
And we're out there and there's 165 motos. And it's a friend of mine, he was an acquaintance at the time. His name's Jim Garrett, and he's a roofing contractor. So, and he's local to me, set within 45 minutes of me. So we're talking about work and jobs, and what are you doing here at Remix? And I'm like, well, I'm just kind of here for a 2-year deal to try to take a deep breath, do my training, help them, and figure out what I want to do. He starts talking about his roofing, and then he starts talking about waterproofing, And so I'm like, oh yeah, I know about waterproofing. And I start rattling this shit off and rattling that off. And he's like, well, wait a minute. And then he's like, wait, you know about this stuff? And I'm like, well, for about 2 years, I did some epoxy coatings and I did waterproofing stuff. And so he's like, can we step over there? So we walk 50 feet away. Mind you, the race is going to be over in it's almost 1 o'clock and the race is going to end. Clearly there's no future in BMX.
Yep.
He says, hey, I want to ask you a question. And I'm like, what's up? He goes, what the F are you doing here?
Mm.
And the way the question was posed wasn't hey, what are you doing in Lemoore right now? What are you doing today? It's more what are you doing with your life, dude? He goes, yeah. He goes, look, man, I have a guy who's become unreliable. I go to these jobs. First of all, he's a full contractor for roofing. He's a licensed inspector. He goes and looks at jobs for $300 and inspects them and gives them a report. And if they choose to go and hire his company, then he gives them a $300 credit goes towards the job. That's a great deal. So he's like, a lot of these houses have decks, and the people are like, hey, well, who do you know that can fix my deck? So he goes, I refer this guy $80,000 to $100,000 a year of business. He goes, why don't you, I won't send that guy another job. You can work under my license and get started with what you're doing. Go buy grinders and this and that and spend a little money and max a credit card. Don't max, but use your card and buy some stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So he starts giving me these jobs and I'm like, wow, this is cool. And so that was my main, like the being on the knees and figuring it out. Then go to this race and have this guy do this. Then I do work for him for like 2 years. He's flipping me jobs as I'm going, getting my own jobs.
Yeah.
And so the funny part is that I feel like life will always have humor and it will always laugh with you and at you. You just have to know how to think it. My very, very first epoxy job that I went to, I contacted a company called Duraflex. I met with the outside sales rep in my area and I said, here's my experience. This is my background. Here's what I've done in BMX. It don't have nothing to do with flooring, but I won over here and I'm going to win over here. So trust me and give me some leads. So he did. I go to my first, I do a Long Beach, California. I go and I give this guy a bid. Well, then I schedule the job. A couple weeks later, I pull in and I go to do the job. And as mind you, I'm trying to get like BMX in the rear view mirror out of here. Like I don't want to see it or hear about it anymore.
Sure.
Now I don't mind it, but back then it was like a bad breakup, right? So this guy says, hey, Greg, I got a question. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? And this is as I'm unloading, getting ready to work. He goes, I was looking at the bid and your name is Greg Hill. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, oh, fuck, here we go. He goes, are you the same Greg Hill, the GT guy? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And he goes, oh shit, you're the reason I bought a GT, man. I had a chrome GT with a blue fork and I had your picture on the wall. And I'm just like, dude, I'm trying to get away from this shit. My very first job, not the fourth or fifth job, the very first job, the dude says this to me. Oh. And I'm just like, on the way home from that job, I'm just laughing. Kind of like, you don't have to hate on BMX. BMX is awesome, man. Like BMX was one of the greatest things that ever happened in my life. But just because I had to move on, don't mean I have to hate on it. But it was interesting that happened. It helped me feel like not hate on BMX so much. It's not BMX's fault that the bottom fell out. The bottom falls out for everyone, and everyone has to figure out what they're going to do, So for me, and then you say like the repivot when the phone stops and this stops and
what impresses me is how you're able to keep rebounding, because one of the questions that I like to ask guests is, when did you realize that you were able to make a career at, for the most part, most people start out, it's fun. You have a training background. And I like to say to my young athletes during our 1 week of rest and recovery every 6 weeks, I say, go jump on your motorcycle and act like you're doing a photo shoot. And I always ask them this question: when did the day come that you threw your leg over a bike and it's now training instead of you threw your bike over a leg, you're riding your dirt bike?
Yes.
For yourself, when did you realize you were going to be able to make a living? You shared a lot of really cool stories. If you're jumping in on episode number 2, I'd highly encourage, go back and listen to episode number 1. That way you don't feel like you're missing part of the story here. When did you realize you had arrived in regards to BMX and it was no longer just going to be something that you enjoyed and you were good at, but you could make a career at it? And then would you parallel that with the same analogy or the epiphany that you had of on your knees looking for direction and go,
yes,
I've got it?
It's absolutely the same.
Okay,
it's just that you don't get the cheat sheet to look at.
Yeah.
You only know it's the same after you've experienced it. But when you're in the hunt and when you're in the fire, it's sometimes difficult to realize these things, But
what would be the year difference, Greg, between when you realized you could make it in BMX and when you were going to start this new career?
when I was 15 years old,
Okay.
I was racing, I was living at home with my parents. My oldest sister, Tanya, and Stu were married. Stu's like the Babe Ruth first big guy. If you were in Stu's era, okay, if you lined up against Stu, this was my attitude. If you wanted to make it, then you had to kick his ass. That's it.
Yep.
You're not making it if you don't beat this guy. So
Yeah.
when I was
It wasn't that
15,
Greg won. It would be that Stu lost.
no, it was
The
like,
conversation.
it's more like, okay, I'm 15, I'm making, 25 grand a year, 30 grand a year.
At 15.
At 15 back in like 1979 or whatever it was. And so
Awesome.
you start realizing, I don't know where this thing's going, but what am I going to go swing a hammer for less money than this?
Right.
When,
Yep.
and no one's there to tell you that, hey man, you can swing a hammer for the same as this, but then you can get your license, right? Then you can build houses, and then you could do so much better than if you were winning on a BMX bike. So no one was there to tell me that. I just was like, well, I'm not going to swing a hammer for that. I'm not going to go to work at some place. So when I was 15, I realized I could make a living at this. When I was able to make a few house payments for my parents when things were tight, I realized this is cool. My mom would
Very cool.
stress on it, but I'm like, it doesn't matter. We're all living here. Just, dude, I would come home and hand my mom the money, the cash, whatever it was. It wasn't elusive. You might come home with $900. You might come home with $2,800, and she would count it all out and give me $100, and that'd be, this is for the next week, putting the rest in the bank. Okay, cool. So that was the first time at 15 I realized BMX, I can do something. And then I went, from 15 to 25. So the next 10 years getting paid to race a BMX bike, and all that was great. And then the pivot came when, okay, it's, going into 1986, and I got to ask myself, do I spend a whole bunch more money and keep GHP going again with my parents, or do I tell them we're done spending money? So the pivot was, I got to shut GHP down because it's a money pit. Okay. And now what am I going to do? There's no rides.
Yeah.
And I wound up.
This is what brings us back full circle, which I'm literally getting goosebumps on this conversation because, and you're not going to like this, but I think thankfully you can't punch me in the face. So I'll say it in that picture of you sitting on your GT with your blue Porsche to your left gave me so much hope. You have no idea, because I'm adopted into a family of 8. Wow. I'm the only one in my family that has a degree, and that's only because my dad said, you're going to go get a degree. Yeah. It's actually what ended my racing career after the IBMX Worlds that you and I did together. But where it becomes very important is my brother was the first person in the United States to sign out of high school directly with the Houston Astros. He skipped college and went directly to the Houston Astros. Well, I grew up in a family where my dad was very supportive. He started a t-shirt company called Beams BMX. Like when you would go to all of the NBL races, my dad had the contract. And
really?
Yep, we had the big maxi van, and he would drive to all the races. So any of the NBL races,
event shirts and everything, I remember that.
Yeah, that was my dad's company. So my dad was behind my behind my racing. I don't want to give the wrong impressions. I love my dad, but he's no longer with us. Yeah. So when you were in BMX action and you were sitting next to your Porsche, and I'm going to say it just briefly, we're not even going to talk about him, but Pistol Pete was in his red convertible Target top 911. Yeah. I took both of those pictures to my dad, and I showed my dad. I said, Dad, you can make money in BMX. Your picture with your Porsche, because here's my brother, right? He's got a huge signing bonus. This was in 87, huge signing bonus out of high school to go to the Houston Astros. And he actually removed me from motocross because he said, it's a bottomless pit. He goes, this is the dumbest sport I've ever seen. And I want to give a shout out to Jeff Jones. Jeff Jones was a gentleman that I went to high school with, and he invited me to go out to the Orlando BMX track and said, hey, why don't you try this BMX thing? And I'm like, whatever. And so I do a couple of races, and my dad comes out on a Saturday night. My dad, he's a businessman, And he's like, wait a second, I could buy one bicycle. We don't go through
This is
gas. We don't
affordable.
go through, oh my goodness. My dad's like, hey, and I see where my dad was at. He's like, hey, you did good in BMX. Why don't we go this route?
Right.
So we got rid of our motorcycles. I actually had Bob Hanna's 1981 YZ125 for Daytona.
Nice.
So we had all the good stuff, but my dad's like looking at it, to your point, and that's why I'm getting goosebumps, because my dad was playing the long game.
Yes.
And he's like, okay. He allowed me to go to BMX only because motocross didn't make sense. I go into BMX. I go all the way through to IBMXF Worlds with you in 87. I flip over the gate, but my dad was very we always spoke on Monday, and he was always very positive. He said, Rob, you've had a great career. Tomorrow we're going to go down to the community college. I thought he was joking. He had never mentioned school in my life.
Right.
And literally I realized, as I shared with you in our last episode, I'd signed a letter of intent with Turnell, because Turnell was managing the KHS team. And I'm thinking, I'm going to California. And I'm not saying this because I'm speaking to Greg Hill, but literally I said to my dad, I have a contract with KHS and Greg Hill's driving a Porsche. And he goes, you need to go to college. And I was never one that fought against my dad, right?
Yes.
My dad was a bigwig at Southland Corporation, which owned 7-Eleven. And I was that kind of son that was like, I had the utmost respect for my dad. I had a reverence for my dad. And he literally, Greg, we had Worlds on the weekend. He gave me Monday. On Tuesday, he literally physically drives me down to the community college, pulls into the parking lot and says, that's the admin building. Go figure it out. I didn't know what a credit hour was.
Right. Right.
Your comment about I am literally talking to the man that gave me hope that I could make a career in BMX.
Right.
And then my dad, I'm using your word, and my dad used it all the time. My dad pivoted me, and I'm like, huh? I just got 8th in the world. That's the way I looked at it, right? I flipped over the gate, but I made the main, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, I was on the gate with Greg Hill, and I was on the gate with Greg Lanthorn, and I was up there with Pistol Pete. And I'm like, what? Gary Ellis was in there. And I'm like, what is going on? What do you mean? I felt like I had gotten somewhere. And my dad said, you need to move on to the next chapter. And that's why I'm getting goosebumps, because I'm looking at you, Mr. Greg Hill, with a Porsche. I'm now looking at Greg Hill on his knees, crying, asking for direction, pivoting. The phone's not calling. He has shut down GHP, has walked away from a very important milestone in his life.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to the question, how does Greg deal with that disappointment and not be filled with resentment?
It's really not, it's a process. The fact that my wife and I have these conversations, she comes from structured, go to work, do 40 hours, get paid for 40 hours. Don't tell your boss he's a jack off.
Okay.
Straight and narrow. I come from, once I made it, I was getting a small paycheck, but my money's at the track. I got to go race in Michigan this weekend. I got to race in Florida the next weekend. I'm going to go make my money. So my attitude, fortunately, and I feel like the racing has allowed me to be like, all right, I've had a couple shitty weeks right now. What am I going to do? And it's like, well, hey, I haven't won a race in over a month. Do you want to just continue to be subpar, or do you want to show the world who you are? Figure it out. So that BMX racing for a living, to try to put my name in the history books, things, that is what I draw from. That's the only way I can do this, because you're going to one race and winning everything, and you're going the next weekend and watching the mains because you didn't make it. It's real quick to slap you in the face and remind you that, hey man, you're not invincible, So I feel like the grind of racing taught me that, to where, okay, I'm not going to give up, because the other part is to be real. Like, what am I going to do if I decide this is too much? And so I don't want to do this. I'm going to go work for a company, and they're going to pay me, and they're going to pay me for hours. And one of the things they expect me to figure shit out.
Yeah.
I can't quit. I'm getting paid to figure this out. If I'm in marketing for a company, they're paying me to stay ahead of the curve. Like, and if we can't figure it out, well, you're getting paid to figure it out. So you think, like, this is me speaking to all kinds of kids and all kinds of adults. You think you're going to go somewhere else where there's no problems? I'm sorry, that doesn't exist. You are getting paid to figure out how to solve problems. Like for me, going and doing a job, once the job starts, I'm like, just like if I got off the plane in Hawaii, dude, it's freaking easy street.
Yeah.
Nothing today on this job can happen that's going to rattle me. It's easy. Not having the phone ring for a week, not selling a job, like having to repivot. These things are what's difficult, how to keep your business going. And I don't have a multi-million-dollar business. I have a business that allows me to make a good living and have time to, run around the house with my grandkid who lives out back and be with my wife. When this is done, I could walk in and say, hey, let's go to lunch. And she'll give me some, oh, I'm on the clock right now. I'm like, well, here, get off the clock and let's go to lunch. I can't do that if I'm leaving the house at 6 and coming home at 6. And so I feel like racing BMX has been able to teach you that, unless you're Jet Lawrence and you just win every weekend, which that's not going to go on forever, but right now it seems like it will. But unless you've got that going on, it don't take long for life to just, grab you and say, yo, I know you think it's cool and you're cool, but you're really not. And you got to figure this out. And pivoting to me isn't about pivoting for more money. It's about pivoting to keep the game working. You have to figure out how to keep it working. You can't do what you did today to win that championship and what you did 4 years down the line to win the same championship, different year, are two different programs. What worked today to motivate me won't work in 4 years and vice versa. You know what I mean?
I'm right there with you. You just ripped open a scab that if you're not comfortable talking about it, like I always say I've said it to you previously, I'll say it again here today. If you don't want to talk about it, I'm totally cool with that.
I'm cool to talk about everything.
When we look at, you mentioned Jet, right? And we look at Jet Lawrence, it's going to come out. He's got a 5-year, 25 million or a 15 million deal. That's only from Honda. That's not Alpine Star. That's not Red Bull, anything else. Right. I'm not going to name any names, obviously, for respect of the people, but I could give you literally 25, all of our listeners, if I gave you a list of 25 guys, every one of them has won a championship either at a 250 or a 450 level.
Nice. That's great.
And are absolutely bankrupt.
Yes, I get it.
Even including some of the most popular people that you can even imagine.
Right.
They are cash strapped. And
get it.
How does Greg Hill, living in the BMX world, and again, I don't know what your largest contract ever was, and like you say, especially in relative terms, 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
You are still living in California. You still have your family. You have not lost everything. And yet there's people that have made money, let's say 10 times more than what you've made in the motocross world, that have nothing, that have absolutely nothing.
I know this. Yeah.
So what does Greg Hill recommend to somebody? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I don't want to manipulate what I thought I heard you say. You're at the peak of your career. Nobody's telling you that this doesn't last for forever, because unfortunately, you've got all these assholes that feed off the Greg Hill money producing machine. Everybody wants a piece of Greg because he's making me money, baby. And he's my best friend. Yeah. Until Greg isn't the top dog anymore. What would you recommend to these? Because I love what you said. Somebody needs to tell these guys it doesn't last forever. I do believe that Dazzy's talking to Jet and Hunter. I think they're doing it the right way. Probably one of the first. I do give Lucas Myrtle a lot of credit. I think he did a lot with getting them to understand it. But you mentioned something that I think a lot of people miss. You've been at the top of the BMX world. I'm going to go so far. I may be wrong. GHP was one of the better teams and one of the better funded programs. Yeah. And then there comes that time where you're like, you know what? We're better. We'd make more money closing it than keeping it open because the economy of the sport.
Absolutely.
But most people can't handle that, Greg. They would, and I'm not saying this disrespectfully to anybody who's gone down the path of drugs. But what you've been through would drive a lot of people into that path. should not affected you that way.
I think so. I really believe there is there's one component to this whole thing that allows you to get through this unscathed. Sure, you're going to have frustrations and you're going to have moments that just suck to go through, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You cannot get anything worthwhile, okay? And nothing good is worth having if you don't have to cry to get it. If you don't have to go through the hard times. So for me, the way to make this work is you have to go off somewhere and you have to murder your ego, okay? You have to understand that you don't fucking matter, okay?
Yep.
Nobody cares about you, okay? Me sitting on a GT next to a Porsche is all bullshit, okay? It's fantasy world. It's me racing my bike and getting paid. No one told me it was going to happen, and nobody told me it wasn't going to happen.
Sure.
I wasn't sitting on my bike in 1982 able to look at the last 15 years and know that guys are making a lot of money. We were looking at nobody has made money in this sport. We're making money now. We got nobody to look to as we go forward. So the magazines leverage that image to sell magazines. The sponsors leverage that image to sell products. The athlete is going to ride the wave until there's no wave to ride. They made a bunch of money. When the wave crashes, how do they get up and live a normal life? Well, you got to kill the ego, because guess what? You don't matter. Okay. I matter to my family.
Yeah.
I have friends that love me and respect me. I know I matter to the right people. I know I matter to God and Christ. Quite frankly, I matter to God and Christ. I don't need anything else. Okay.
Sure.
Nothing else.
Sure.
I don't need it. So, but if you have an ego, you're never making it through that, because ego keeps you making decisions for the wrong reasons. You start believing in that you're some cool blah, blah, blah. You're not. You're just, I put myself in the position I was in to win races because I trained my ass off.
Yeah.
I wasn't the best rider, but I figured out how to get to the finish line first. I believed in myself. I always have, but my early on, and I don't know if other people had this or not, but early on, my mother would tell me, this voices in my head always. She would say, "Bub, you can do anything you want." I would go out and get 7th or 6th, and it might be a local national she was at, and she's like, "There's always next week, Bub. You'll be fine." And I'm like, I don't give a shit about next week. Next week's not helping me. Today sucked. And she says, "Well, today's over and you can do anything you put your mind to. So do you want to sit and cry about today, or do you want to look towards next week? There's a national coming up. Do you want to go and you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it." So for these guys that make tremendous money, and honestly, the more money you make, the harder this process is. For BMX, when I'm sitting on the GT, I might be making 150 grand a year in 1982. I'm not signed into the NFL on a $3 million signing bonus and $2 million a year, and played for 4 years, and all of a sudden can't play anymore and nobody knows who I am. And so now I've got a bunch of money, but I'm going to spend that money because my ego trip is there, and I'm going to waste that money, and I'm going to wind up with nothing. And I'm going to wind up on drugs because I'm trying to find some way of dealing with this shit. And for me, if you kill the ego, you won't have to worry about how to deal with it. Now it just matters that when you lay your head down at night, you feel good about what you're doing. You believe in yourself. You can't believe in yourself if you have some giant ego. I really don't think you can.
Can I ask you a
That's
hard
why I like Eli Tomac so much.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a good example of that.
He don't have some huge ego. If he does, we don't see it.
Well, and the funny part, you and I raced against, well, I think you didn't. I raced against John when he was riding for Mongoose, at the 14 to 16 age group, with his open face JT helmet and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think between him and his mom, between John and Kathy, I think they've
Yes.
kept Eli very grounded. Reminds me a lot of Jeff Stanton. I think the Tomac who invested their money in a lot of acreage out there in Cortez,
Yes.
just like Stanton in Michigan.
Just being a good old boy,
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a hard question again if you're not comfortable. What year did Greg Hill slay his ego?
Um, I think it was, I really want to say it was like right around 88 or so.
That
I remember at the end of 87, you had to do it a few times because it always creeps back in, you know? But at the end of 87, I was on Robinson. I didn't have a great year. And I'll never forget this. I was at my house, family was gone. I went upstairs and sat at the very top of the stairs. I didn't read articles and I didn't study to do this. I got a piece of paper. This
Mhm.
was this was like December 1st. I got a piece of paper and I wrote down, this was December 1st, 1987. I wrote down 1988 NBL #1 pro and I looked at the note and I let it, and I looked at it and then I crumbled it up and threw it away, meaning it's done.
Mm.
And we went to the Christmas Classic 30 days later and I won, you know, and I was leading points and I'm like, all right. And it was like, I'm not trying to win this championship for my ego trip. This will sound really crazy, but we weren't paid loads of money. Okay. I have a BMX contract to win races that's probably equivalent to a guy who's getting paid, you know, 130 or 150 grand a year to be like a general manager, vice president, whatever, of a smaller company, you know?
Sure.
And I'm just trying to get out here. So I wanted to just race and try to win for myself. Like I want to win for myself. And the whole year was about racing, winning, picking the races I want to go to and dealing with all the elements. And I went to the Grands and I won the championship. And it was like, not to be cool, but it was, you know, so that was a great moment. And then the following 2 years later, I was at the end of my contract. This is when you realize the world is a cruel place.
Mm.
My contract with Robinson, I believe this was the 1990 ABA Grands. My contract with Robinson was up at the end of December. We're at the end of November in Oklahoma. This is so jacked up, man. I'm not up for a title, but I'm in a perfect place to win the Grands. After the first two mains, if I win the last main and certain people do something, I'll win the race.
Mm.
I'm going into the first turn out front. The people that needed to not do well were not doing well. Coming out of first turn, they stopped the race. That we had to do a rerun because 3 guys crashed at the first jump. The rule is if 3 guys crash before the crash, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. I get back up on the gate. I get out of the gate. I'm going over the first jump. I roll a pedal. I don't know what place I was in. I was up there, but I roll a pedal. And the next thing I know, I'm going over the bars. And I got my arm, my head is like this. My armpit's on the ground. My body continues to go, but my armpit stays on the ground. So like, if you ever had a tree branch the size of your finger and you break it and snap it and you hear that,
Mm-hmm.
that's up against here. And I hear snap. And it tore, it, it tore 3/4 of an inch of a ligament off my shoulder, right off of it. They had to use drywall anchors, drill the holes, drywall anchors, get surgery. So this happened. My contract expired. Okay. I was like, no way they're going to resign me. Robinson says, look, we'll give you $1,000 a month for the next 12 months. And any race you win, we'll give you $2,000 for first place. And I'm like, dude, I got to go get my shoulder operated on. And it's going to be 18 months. Like, you can offer me $20 million to win and you won't spend $1.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So, but what lets you know that you don't matter and no one cares is when you're just laying on the ground. It's Sunday evening. It might be 8, 9 o'clock at night. You're in Oklahoma City. Okay. And you're in a wheelchair and the medic rolls you out the building. You realize it's about 29 degrees and it's lightly snowing. So you're freezing your ass off. Your shoulder's dislocated. It's hurting like the most unbelievable pain that I've ever experienced. And it's there. Okay. And I can't make it stop. You get rolled out to the freaking sidewalk, and the lady says, "Hey, the medic, they'll be here in a minute to transport you to the hospital." Dude, I'm sitting there for 15 minutes, freezing my ass off in the massive pain. No one is around, dude. My team, my teammates, my team manager, nobody, man, nobody's around. I'm out there by myself. And I'm like, wow, this just goes from being really good to really shit, like real fast.
Real fast.
And some car pulled up, and this guy, a father, said, this guy like a 10 or 12-year-old son, he goes, "Hey, Greg, I'm taking my son to the hospital right now. You want to hop in? I'll take you." And I'm like, "Please." There you go. So you're on the roller coaster of this ride. And I know that's a long story. I'm sorry, but
No.
you have to
Please don't
constantly remind yourself about your ego, and you have to park it and check your ego, because if you don't do that, all the things that you can do with your money that people choose to do with their money when they have made money, but they're trying to figure shit out, there's probably nothing good they can do with their money. Everything they spend their money on is like an ego pump, an ego boost to make them feel better until all of a sudden they don't have any money left.
You mentioned that you had to kill your ego a couple times. Is there another significant stage where you had to kill it?
I think just those couple times was it. I don't feel like I've tried to pray in my life, like to be humble, to be real. I don't want to be the guy that walks around thinking he's great. I've been around other BMXers that are like super arrogant, and it makes me want to throw up. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't care how many races you've won, and I don't care like how cool you think you are. You're just a normal dude. You get, if you fall down, you're gonna get a scratch and bleed. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you put your pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. So, there's people that I know in the sport, they think that like they feel like maybe they're who their nickname was,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not happening. It's not the case,
Not to get on a bunny trail here, but it's like the podcast that Carter and Miranda have.
Yeah.
I love listening to them because I remember Mike in the Pink, and I remember him on Hutch, and he was, but he always seemed very authentic. I never got a chance to interact with him.
Right.
Her Carter, obviously Mike was at a pro level when Eric was top amateur. Eric was, for me, being an East Coast guy, I looked at Eric Carter, Matt Hayden, obviously Mike King, Billy Griggs. I put those guys on a pedestal. And then I listened to that podcast, and you just realize how down to earth those two guys are. I never got a chance to, Mike was very, very fun and vocal. Mike seemed to be what you saw was what you got. And then the podcast just reiterates it. And it's cool to listen to Eric, because Eric, obviously extremely accomplished and just the salt of the earth dude. And I love listening to those guys.
Like, they're both great people. They're both who they are. They're not trying to be different people. Mike's the showman. Mike was super fast, and he won some races, but he'll tell you, "Hey man, I was all about style, and I was the showman,"
Sure.
And Eric was always the super fast, just do whatever it takes to win. Eric Carter, like, we were out camping at where his place is, where he works out there,
Okay.
at the KOA. And he came by, we talked for like probably 2 hours, and man, he's the most amazing, humble, coolest dude, super fast on the track, but they're good people,
What goes back to, like you said, what you see is what you get versus, the egocentric guy that's walking around like, because he had Greg Hill's accomplishments, he's got this big head and everybody just wants to punch him straight in the teeth.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not gonna like, when you start winning races and everyone starts treating you a certain way, you fall into that. You go to races and people think you're arrogant and they think you're this, but I'm just walking around going, dude, I'm going to kick these guys' asses today. Dude, if I don't think this way, I'm not going to win.
Well, I think what you said earlier is, I think, one of the most profound statements I've heard on the podcast thus far. And that is, nobody teaches you how to be a champion, because the only way you can really learn it is to go do it. And then let's face it, motocross, BMX is a young person's sport. And,
Absolutely.
obviously in my wheelhouse, and you've got a background in it as well, you're asking an 8, 9, 10-year-old to become a physiologist, a nutritionalist,
Yeah.
understand the law of physics, and then
Right.
deal with being in the limelight with gear deals and magazine ads. And
Right.
oh, by the way, you're going to get paid quite a bit of money and you're somehow supposed to manage it all.
Yeah.
And if you don't come from a family who understands how to manage money, that only compounds the problem. You know
Yes,
what I mean?
absolutely. For sure.
So yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword. I liked what you said earlier, and I will give Lucas Myrtle a shout out on this. I know Jimmy Button does a good job at the agency level. I know that that's what those guys have tried to do is when they're on the top of their game. Did I lose
Yeah.
you?
No, there we are. It was,
All right.
yeah.
Like with what Lucas and those guys, try to do is,
Right.
hey, while you're on top of the world, let's go ahead and start putting this money aside. I know like the
That's
Watson
right.
group, when they were working with Josh Hansen, he had bought a couple Lambos and they got to a point where they're like, call us if you're going to spend anything like that. And then they would try to talk them off of a shelf to not buy
Right.
that third Lambo because, like you say, that money is not growing at the rate that you're
Buy a hot cylinder for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the idea that you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I so
Right.
appreciate what you've shared with us, because to say I've never thought about, and I've never heard somebody say you have to murder the ego. And the fact that you use Rodman as an example yourself, not that you were murdering the ego when you're on your knees praying for direction. Like I say, that's just a life pivot. That's not you walking around
Right.
beating your chest and,
Right.
if somebody's put you in your place. And now you're like, oh goodness,
Right.
I have to deal with this.
Right.
But for the sake, and I appreciate you making a comment, hey, for the young listeners, if not the listeners themselves, maybe their parents. And then
Yeah.
that's the part that I think is so crazy with all of this is it's such a young person's sport. And
Right.
I don't want this to come across arrogant or I shouldn't say arrogant, but more disrespectful, but I just don't. And again, I could be wrong. In your era, I think of, kind of like if in the motocross world, you go by colors. When I think about the BMX world, okay, you think Diamondback, you always had Harry, you always had
Yeah.
Eddie.
Right.
If I think about GT, I always have yourself on there and Gary Ellis. Different
Yeah.
generations. I'd put you more on the Robinson side
Yep.
when I think about Gary being on GT.
Yeah.
You go and you look at Haro. I always think about Pistol Pete, and at the time, Mikey had just come up. I think about Mongoose. You've got Shelby James, you've got Todd Corbett, and you have Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill
Yeah.
has been on, Redline and all
Right.
that. When I think of Redline, I think of Mr. Bill or John Anderson, or
Yep.
I think of Profile with Shelby James and, Zygers. And I mean, Profile at the time with Eric Roop, they had
Even
like
yeah.
12 or 13 people on that team,
Yeah.
I just don't see it. And I know the market is completely different, but
Yeah.
I go back to the analogy of the 80s, right? The 80s music still stands to this day. You go to a restaurant,
Yes.
they're playing 80s music, and
Yeah,
it can kind of sing along with it and they know it.
Totally.
And I talk to anybody who was up, raised in BMX or even moto for that matter. Pardon me. Thanks to Jeremy McGrath bringing that attention to BMX into their moto world.
Absolutely.
And thanks to Big E, because Eric Bartolos is so instrumental in that whole transition. But,
Yeah.
you look at that and you go, okay, show me a generation. And again, I don't want this to be disrespectful to anybody. We have a very, very, very cool guy, Nathan Glab out of Australia. He's our first Complete Racing Solutions elite coach. And
Nice.
he's killing it in Australia, and we're getting him over here for the Grands. And
That's great.
he's a cool guy. He's got a friend and a business partner, Ben Simmons. He owns Prophecy.
Oh, great. Nice.
Yeah, just an unbelievable group of guys. And the thing that's so cool is where I was going with the thread of thought without trying to offend anybody is when I think about who's going to make that 8-man main event at the Murray World Cup, at the NBL Grands at Kentucky. You mentioned Christmas Classic, Pittsburgh. You could go, I'm going on these East Coast races as an NBL guy. That's what I grew up.
Right. Yeah.
You could have had the Patterson brothers. You could have had Pete. You could have had Greg Hill. You could have had Chippers. You could have had Eric. You could have had Roland Veit. You could have had, there were 35, we hadn't gotten into the Murray guys, with Scott and all these other guys in your life. Anthony Sewell, you just, Turnell Henry, you start going down all these lists. we only had 8 dudes on the gate, not 42.
Right.
And when you think about the idea that the pro races had quarters to get to the
Yeah.
main event,
Right.
and you're seeing Brent Patterson didn't make it out of the semi. Holy smokes. The dude's number 1 and he doesn't even make the main. My point for bringing all that up is you were in a generation where,
There was way more depth.
well, and that's what triggered me when you said your mom was trying to be kind and you're like, I just got beat today. It doesn't matter about next week. And
Right.
I don't, no disrespect to mom. She's only loves you to death.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think really people put into perspective what the depth of that pro class was.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I
Yeah, it's definitely way more deep than today. And I'm not hating on today's BMX guys, but
right.
yeah, it's just different. You know, we could race every single weekend and make money. Today they can't. You know, they
Right.
race when they can race. And I'm just, you know, I'm super happy to not be in today's sport where that would rather have be from yesterday, you know?
Yeah.
But there's one thing I was going to say, and I want to direct this to any like BMX guys or motocross guys that are like, maybe their better days are behind them. I've always, like, when you said, how are you able to get through that next moment when you know you have to, when you pivot? I always tell myself it's way easier to control my budget than it is to make more money. If you told me that I have to go out and make an extra $3,000 a month right now, starting 30 days from now, I would immediately look at our budget of what we're spending every month, and I would remove $1,500 out of somewhere.
Yeah.
Even if that's eating out, whatever that might be. You can always make the ends meet by controlling what you spend. You can't always make more money when you want to. So it may be difficult to tell people that who just got off the ride, but yeah, you don't need to buy a brand new car for whatever. If your family's rich, you know, Deegan, the guy is just amazing. He goes out and buys a Lambo. Okay, cool. Well, he could have bought the Lambo before he ever started racing pro motocross. Family has money. I'm sure he could have done that. But what about the guy who parents sacrificed everything to get where they are? You're making money, really good money the last 3 or 4 years. That ain't gonna last forever, man. So it's a lot easier to save your money than it is to spend it all and figure out how to make more.
Amen.
But you have to have good mentorship. You won't get there on your own. I don't think it's possible.
I could not agree with you more. Absolutely could not agree with you more. I was married for 25 years and went through a very ugly 5-year divorce.
Yeah.
And I was just going to be my kid's dad. I was going to build my businesses.
Right.
And I was living out in Claremont. I had a condo on the lake. When they'd come out, we'd go out on the water, we'd wakeboard, we'd go to the dirt,
Yeah.
we'd go to the dirt jumps up there in Ocala.
Yeah.
I never was going to get married ever again.
Right.
And I met my wife, Michaela. And the reason why I tie these two together is she's an artist. She grew up in an artistic family.
Yeah.
I'm about as left brain as you can get. My world is literally zeros, ones, and they're all in a square, right?
Yeah. Right.
Even loading the dishwasher, and this is where it ties into your comment, I never realized how different two people could be.
Oh yeah.
Well, she knows nothing about money. And she's really helped humble me a little bit because I grew up with, like I said, my dad was very successful in the business world.
Yeah.
And he taught us budgeting at a very young age.
Right.
And my wife literally doesn't even understand the benefit of overpaying a mortgage because, in her words, no one's ever taught her. And I was like, it was just thrown like a huge, oh gosh, I am thankful, but I didn't realize she didn't realize it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You know, so to your point exactly, it's like, and that's one of the things that we're trying to get across is part of our learning curve with our coaching certification is like when I always ask the hard question, why do you want to become a coach? Well, to be wealthy and have a lot of free time. Well, for the first 10 years, you'll have neither. You won't have any time and you'll have no money because until you do a lot of, and pardon my language, but until you do a lot of shit, you can't talk about doing a lot of shit. No. So get busy doing a lot of shit and getting successful so that you can talk about it. So you have credibility, like with yourself. When you go to the track, like when you talked about Coy Gibbs bringing you out to the house, he didn't call you because somebody told you.
Right.
They called you because you were Greg Hill. Coy knew who you were. Yes, maybe somebody, hey, you need to look this dude up. But the point being is
Right.
you had the credentials to get flown out to spend a weekend to go through the race shop and see how cool that is.
Yeah.
The thing that I find so interesting is what we're talking about. And again, if you're listening to this part 2 for the first time and not listening to part 1, you're not going to understand what I'm going to say. Greg, what still blows my mind is at such a young age, I mean, literally single digits for you, you were starting to have success. And there are people, especially with the advent of the computers and phones and people
Right.
literally double digits and still haven't accomplished what you did before you were 10 years old. Seriously, put that into perspective. It's pretty frightening.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think about it. Everyone's different. I'd never thought and set out to be creating some BMX career, you know? I really just was diagnosed with ADD early on, like in 2nd grade or something.
Yeah.
And I went to 3 different elementary schools because I was fighting all the time. And I was fighting in my neighborhood all the time. And so I just knew that if I want something, I'm not saying, hey, you have what I want, I'm going to beat your brains in and take it from you. I'm saying, if I want something, I got to fight for it. So, well, I've been fighting my whole life. So what's the big deal? And then sometimes people say, well, if you train all year long and fall short, well, that's a bummer. That sucks. Like, you did all that work for nothing. And I'm like, yeah, you could look at it that way. If you've never won shit in your life, that's how you might look at it.
That's right.
But you might work all year long and fall short. The journey to success only travels through failure. You will never win if you don't lose. So, some of these things are real cliche. Well, you either won or you learned. Well, whatever, that's cute. But it's like, when you go back to your rental car, okay, it's like 1988 and you want to win the NBL championship and you've been leading all year long and there's only 3 races left and you got Gary Ellis and Billy Griggs right close to you. You're going into the semi, okay, to make the main today. And you got like a 35-point lead on these guys, which is massive. And you don't make the main and they get first and second. And now you have a 5-point lead. So if you're not sitting in your rental car, I think somewhere on here, there's a missing chunk of skin that overgrew. I got in my rental car and I was so mad, I punched my rear view mirror through the windshield. I was like, no gloves. And that, mind you, because I rode for Robinson, Gary rode for GT, same companies, right?
Yep.
Billy Griggs was just a great guy. So we shared a rental car together. And we all traveled together and we all went to eat together and we all hung out. It was like really, some people think, well, that's really stupid, but hey man, it is what it is, So I got the car and Gary's here and Billy's there and I'm sitting there and they're like being super quiet because like one of them won and the other one got second. And like, I was like this far ahead before the weekend and now I'm like barely ahead. And I just punched the thing. And it went like 3 inches out the windshield and they were just like super quiet. And I was like, I had to break the ice. I'm like, hey, it's cool. I had a moment. I rode like shit and you guys got first and second, way to go. But this sucks. So, we get through the moment,
Yep.
It is what it is. But
I just
go through the shit to get to the good.
Well, and this is where we get into the subject of what's the difference between mental toughness and resiliency. And that resiliency is, if you think about the letter V, right? The more vertical, straight up and down the drop, the more important it is for you.
Right.
And then you have the bottom, and the longer it stays flat, that's you wallowing and waiting for somebody, I liked what you said, to come save you, which isn't going to happen.
No.
And then how quickly you can bounce back from that, well, that's going to be your resiliency.
Yeah.
But when I look at mental toughness, I always say F motivation, If you wait till you're motivated, you won't do anything.
That's right.
You got to be disciplined. And when you block that schedule out and at 5:15, you say you're going to the gym, you're at the gym at 5:15. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't tweak the workout, but you're there. That's the difference between being motivated and dedicated.
Yes.
And that's what I love what you've said in these last two, last show and this show here together. It's like, yeah, there were times that you weren't very happy with the results, but it didn't slow you down. You got up to, like, I love what Mom said. You got tomorrow. You can sit and wallow in it if you want, but you got to fix the results.
Like Apollo Creed said,
Amen.
there is no tomorrow.
That's right. Amen. Amen. People scoff at that series, but
Oh, that was the greatest. Sure, it's Hollywood and all that, but it was the greatest trials and tribulations and never giving up and getting beaten and pounded into the dirt. And, that's the reason that movie was so rocky, the first one. They're all heroes. The very first one is just like, you got a dream and you got to go for it. Like it's way worse to have a dream and never try to go for it, than it is to like have a dream and fall short. Dude, if you fall short, at least you were trying, man. You would have never known. You don't have to guess now. You tried. You did your best. Maybe your greatest moment won't be in this chapter in life, but that chapter is ready to be written. You'll find it somewhere.
it reminds me of that Howard Jones line where he says, you're the fastest runner, but you're not allowed to win.
Yeah.
And it's just so darn true.
Right.
And I'm going to, again, I just got goosebumps on something, and I hope it doesn't offend you because it's going to embarrass you. But, you and I talked about it in our first for part one together, how influential the Rocky movies were for us. Now, if you want to laugh at me and think that that's soft and fluffy, that's cool. I think you're missing the point, or you weren't neck deep in, like I shared with you in our first part together. My vocal track was Todd Corbett, Sean Newberry, Mike Wiggins. Right. I mean, there was no showing up and half cooking a moto. You'll be in fifth faster than you can count to five.
Right, exactly.
And you had Shelby James there, was our local guy, and we had some of the best in the country that were there. My point for bringing that up right now, though, is think about how Rocky, the movie series, how it morphed, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, he gets a little bit older and she's at the bottom of the stairs and she says, you can't win. And then the next episode, I was thinking about Drago, and Drago's in the performance labs and he's injecting. And here's you racing against somebody who's starting to take drugs and turning our sport upside down and backwards. Think about the parallels of Rocky. And you were freaking living it I was living it at the amateur level, but I wasn't making a living at it, right? I'm still have the fortunate, I'm at home. I'm still in high school for that matter. And you're racing against a guy that's literally Drago injecting shit in his arms.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm racing against a guy that you don't even have to try to convince people that he did stuff. If you were there, then if you know, because that's why I don't hold anything back. When people say, hey man, I'll talk about Pete Lonkarevich every day of the week. He cheated. He took drugs. He did massive amounts of steroids to win, some money or whatever, like if he has a problem with that, then like, dude, you know where I'm at. You can come out and I don't care.
Well,
who gives a shit?
Well, but that's what I love about yourself is you stand on a ground of morals and principles and calling a spade and so forth and so on. But think about what you overcame, right? I liked what you said in our last talk together. You're like, okay, if you're 3 inches, we know Billy Griggs and Gary, you mentioned those two, Mikey King. One thing you could get out of those three was consistency. Eric Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, when that gate dropped, and
they're always going to be good.
Yeah. Like you worked with John Purse. There was something about that consistency.
Yeah.
When it goes from 6 inches to 2 bike links and it does it in less than a year, you're doing your uphill repeats, you're doing your downhill repeats, you're in the gym.
Yeah. There's not much else.
It doesn't add up.
You can't do a whole lot more else, but, yeah.
And that's what I love about when you look at your career, there'll never be an asterisk. There'll never be a blemish. There'll never be but,
to deal with that.
Yep. It's like when Miranda and Eric had Gary Ellis on there. And I love how Gary and I know you guys raced a lot together, teammates in all 9 yards, but just the idea of his he just literally wanted to rip your head off and spit down your throat,
Yeah.
And he was a guy that was just very, very poised, never, not mouthy, didn't
Right.
smiled a lot after he won, but never was a big shit talker or anything else. But think about yourself, Gary, and
Right.
you look at the consistency of all of that, and then you get into the statistics, which I love.
The cool part with Gary and myself was that when I was on GT, I was like the first rider that they put their efforts behind, really.
Yeah.
And then later I was on Robinson, but when I was on Robinson, now Gary was on GT. So Gary and we traveled together for like 2.5 years straight, to all these races and shared rooms and shared rental cars. We've had like situations where one of us ran the other one off the track, wasn't on purpose. And then you're at dinner that night and you're like, be pissed off for a minute, but it's like, whatever, and serious at the track. But then when we're together, it's like you can have the moments where you laugh and joke and talk and you kind of let out. Like even to this day, like my phone will chime off and I'll look and it'll be like 3 middle finger emojis from Gary, or I'll send him some shit like that, and
Love it.
this is our way of poking. I still talk to him all the time. He's a great guy, but it's really cool to analyze this with athletes. Whereas like I talked to my wife about this, like Gary, it's amazing because he was so good and he came from a normal family. Like he wasn't fighting every day in school. Sure, every kid gets in some scuffles here and there, but he wasn't getting in fights every day at school. He wasn't going to a bunch of different schools. Like home life was normal. The guy didn't go out and win races because he was pissed off at life.
Right.
He just loved BMX and then learned how to win. And
that's what's frightening is think about if he was in that environment.
Yeah, well, that's amazing.
That's scary.
Yeah, I think he did it in a more wholesome manner. Yet he still, was on the floor wondering what's going on, frustrated, in tears. If you've raced high level motocross, BMX, I don't care if you played high level sport anywhere.
Yep.
In your career, man, you were on the floor a few times.
That's right.
It's just how it goes. So
100%.
It's just interesting. People's backstory is super interesting to me.
No, I totally agree. When you look at the company that you are running, owning, you own it from A to Z. What would you recommend to somebody who is afraid to go out and start their own business, knowing what you know, taking all your race experience? You talked about it's very difficult stage, right? I call it your side hustle. You're doing your day job and you're like, you could almost literally use your example. You're racing during the day, but you spent a couple of years doing some epoxy on the side.
Sure.
Somebody like you talked about, it's very difficult because you're working all day and working all night. With you being 8 years removed from starting and, kind of steamrolling this and obviously off to a good start. What would you say, what would you recommend? Give some level of advice to somebody who is going to be discouraged. I've said it 3 times here today, but I'm amazed how many times you've been punched in the face and you keep getting up. But
I'm just too stupid to know the difference. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want, quitting won't be something that goes on my tombstone. I might be stubborn, but I didn't quit,
That's right.
And I mean, I can be in a fight and I could be like getting my head pounded in. There's going to be no time to walk away. I won't walk away. You'll be going, dude, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Yeah, dude, let's go until we're not going. I'm not quitting. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it. But
okay.
I feel like the advice I would say is, like, I have some people that reach out to me in BMX that have reached out to me. They're not necessarily retired pros, but might be, they followed me and then they saw me switch into epoxy. And guys say, hey, I'm thinking about doing epoxy. Like, can you give me some advice? What's the best thing to do? And I'm like, look, you've only heard about the last 8 years, but if we go back 25 years ago, I spent a couple of years learning and doing and working. I went to work for my buddy's father's company and I was the very bottom, like $10 an hour, 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
And the only reason I did it was because my buddy says, just do it, man. I'll teach you everything you need to know. So my thing is, I tell people, hey, yeah, you can start this business for like, if you have a credit card that has $5,000 on it or 10 grand on it, you're in this business.
Yep.
You get yourself, a lot of people our age have like maybe trucks or vans that are like they've had, or you can go get one like cheap. You can go to Home Depot and buy a 4-inch and a 7-inch grinder. You can then buy a shop vac. You can get all your tools to do this business for probably $1,500. Okay. Use a credit card for that. And then if you sell a job, you're just going down and buying material. I'll buy material. You can use your card and you can pay money. Say you pay $500, $600, $700 for material and you sell the job for $1,800, $2,200, $2,500, whatever. That's great. But what's better than that is go get a job working for XYZ epoxy company. If this is what you think you might want to do, and show up and give a shit. Because right when you show up to work and you give a shit, you just now became the best guy in their company. Because most people, they don't give a shit. They're there for their paycheck. They're not going the extra mile. So work for that guy for a year. And then the way you can make that work where you don't feel like you're busting your butt, where you're not going to say, well, I would never work this hard for someone else. Well, when you're working for that guy, you're really working for yourself because you are investing your time into learning a trade and you're going to take notes on everything they do. And you'll get to a point where you're like, okay, I know enough about this now. I think I can pull this off. And just do it. Like my company is a small little shit company. We don't have like, I'm almost handyman status. Yeah, I'm licensed and I'm insured. But I'm not doing, 3 million a year in sales and have salespeople and have all this crap. I am right now kind of struggling to get things moving again. And it's large part because it's summertime and July and August kind of slow because epoxy is not something that you have to have. If I could do it all over again, I'd go back 10 years ago and I'd be a plumber right now. Because you cannot not have your plumbing work. A couple days, okay, whatever, but you need it working. You can always get a floor sometime. You don't need it. You want it, but you don't need it.
That's a great point.
And then kids they need to know that. Like, I mean, I think that, working, deciding what you want to do and go to find a company you can fit into and work for them, learn everything you can, then break away and go do your own thing.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Jace from
that's like going to a trade school.
Yeah, literally.
So,
well, and that's where your advice is absolutely priceless. Because if you don't have a parent that makes that recommendation, what do? You kind of get lost in it. The first time we went over to Australia, we were invited to go do some performance camps, and we landed in Australia. And Jace from Gypsy Tales reached out to me. He goes, "Hey, I hear in Australia, great guy, and I've been very fortunate. I've been in all 3 of his studios around the world. I've been in. He had 2 in Australia. I've been in both of those, and then his California."
Yeah.
And he picks Michaela and I up at the airport, and we're driving in, and we get to his studio. And humble beginnings. He was in his buddy's basement. They kind of soundproof the room, and he's got sounding boards and mixing boards and cameras. And me, I'm just very inquisitory. I said, "Ace, man, how did you learn this?" He goes, "You know what, Rob?" He goes, "There is one hell of a university out there, and it's called YouTube." I go, "Are you serious?"
Yes, you're right. Yes, sir.
Everything I've learned is on YouTube.
Yes.
I said, "You've never gone to school for this?" He goes, "Nope." To your point exactly. If you have the desire to learn and you're willing to invest some time and effort, like you said, just showing up, you're already ahead of 99% of the people.
I mean, you're already jumping the gate when you're showing up. And like that guy's name is Jason, right? Gypsy Tales.
Yep, Jace from Gypsy Tales.
If there's people I want to meet, like he's one of them. He's a cool dude. But like he loves what he's doing. When he is, he's not, he's like a little kid in a candy store when he's asking these guys questions. And a lot of these guys, I know they're friends behind the scenes. I know they are. But he truly loves what he's doing. And how can you love what you're doing that much, doing it for someone else?
Exactly.
So
I liked what you said. If you want to get into epoxy, go work for somebody. The
Right.
quickest way to learn it is, baptism by submersion. I mean, there you
Yeah.
go. So yeah, that's a great point.
I think
Well, Greg,
just there's always a way to figure it out. Like even now, if the epoxy thing just parks itself,
Yeah.
and I just have to like look at the wife and say, hey, I'm at that intersection. We call it the intersection of faith and logic, It's
Yep.
like we showed up and we don't know what we're doing again. Let's try to
I love it.
we have to do that. It's basically okay because like we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
We will make it. My wife is 10 times smarter than I am and just handles shit, So if I'm down, I just look at her, man, and vice versa, but
Exactly.
I'm not thinking about, hey man, how can I make $1 million? I'm thinking about how can we get our bills paid, save some money, go to dinner without planning it, just go if we want. Like we want to do some stuff, okay, but what I want the most of is I want the time because you can't buy it. You can't buy time, you can't make time, but you only get so much time. So
Yeah, it's the most precious commodity of life right there.
like we always joke, we're the most boring couple on the planet. We'll be sitting here on the couch and at night it might be 8:45 and it's like she might have the remote, right? And all of a sudden like she's surfing around and I'm not looking at her and all of a sudden, I'm thinking, dude, we're not surfing anymore. What the hell? And I look over and she's like bobbing for apples and shit, like, or it's me doing it, right?
Yep,
So
exactly.
I'd rather be doing that than I just got home at 6:00 and I worked 50 hours, 60 hours this week and I don't get to see my family. And, okay, I make more money doing that than if I'm doing what I'm doing now, but my money, I can't buy time with it. So what you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
you
really
can't
kind of
break time
jacked
with
up.
it. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't realize you just worked a 50, 60-hour work week to build somebody else's company.
Right.
And like you said, you're doing 3 out of 5 jobs. It's your
You
company.
got to go shopping and get groceries and you got to like mow your yard and you got to like do all this other shit. And it's like, you don't have time to do anything when you're on the hamster wheel,
No. And the most valuable, the most precious resource we have is time. And that impromptu.
Your dad, I want to get back to this. Your dad was a genius, okay? Because he was able to see the crystal ball of where you were and where you knew you wanted to go. And he knew that the destination you wanted to go to, mind you, that's the same destination I wanted to go to. It wasn't there.
Yeah.
Just because I was making a good living and younger guys were wanting to come up and make that good living, but what we wanted wasn't there.
Yeah.
You want to be able to sign that 3-year contract with the Cardinals and get a $500,000 signing bonus. And if the 3 years don't pan out, you still got $5.2 million you got paid. You're not getting that here.
Right.
You're not getting that here.
Yep.
And when you quit BMX, you still got to go to work somewhere.
Yep.
So that picture on the GT is really kind of an illusion because there's people out there that thought we were making millions of dollars and we weren't. And Osborne talked about it like, oh, well, you might be making $1 million selling your magazine, and GT might be making millions of dollars selling their bikes all around the world. But I sure as hell ain't making $1 million.
Exactly. Well, like I always try to tell, I whenever I'm doing some consultation with our coaches, because all coaches are coming from another profession of some sort, right? And the problem is I always say, if you're making 100 grand, most companies are working on a 10X. So they're making $1 million, paying you 100. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. It's 10X is usually the baseline. So, well, Greg, man, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for your honesty and your transparency. I've learned a lot.
Absolutely.
And I've just, like I said, I'm very humbled that you were willing to come on the show. I know that our listeners are going to really eat this up.
Man, listen,
it's good.
Your show is amazing. And after we did our first show, I was tooling around on YouTube, and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, there's Rob. He's talking to the Gypsy Tail dude, or he's talking to the guy you're going to talk to in a little while.
Cooksey.
Yes. And then there was like one where you're on there and I'm like, babe, this is the dude right there. This is like, so, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's cool. And there's a lot of motocross guys that like, there's a lot of commonalities in BMX guys that retired from racing pro and motocross guys, and just the community that you're in. It's a cool community. I wish that I could connect with some of those dudes, but it's cool. Just,
Well, we'll talk off the record. We'll make those things happen. And like I raced against Mike King, but I don't know him personally. He wouldn't know me from Adam, but I'd love to have Mike on the show.
oh, that's
Mr. Bill and I, we talked a little bit because he had that heart attack, and
Oh yeah.
so I am looking to try to get Mr. Bill on. I don't have Mikey King's number, but I'd love to chat with him. His brother.
I don't have his number, but I mean, I could reach out to him and tell him to get a hold of you. He's a good dude. He's easy to talk to. He's the one guy,
But I think for anybody that's a fan of this podcast, it's the idea that these are people we grew up and
Yes.
put people on pedestals. We do forget that they put their, boxers on the same way we do.
Right.
We all have trials and tribulations and disappointments.
Absolutely.
So Greg, I know on behalf of all of our listeners, they definitely enjoyed it. So thank you so much. And
I appreciate it.
again, man, I hope that we can keep this relationship growing and maybe
for sure,
have you
man.
back for another show.
I'm happy to be here. Appreciate you having me. And it's been a really, really awesome experience. So
Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate you,
You're
bud.
welcome. Thank you.
Take care.
Meet the Guest. Next chapter. Part of the Coach Robb Podcast Network.